Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching in the world. My name is Sean Driver, and this one, a little bit something different. I don't usually enter into the realm of transfer discussions or new player additions because the reality is don't get to see enough players in England, elsewhere, to be able to really have an opinion. I mean, I guess the reality is with the rumors that are out there involving transfers, I'm probably going to be just as accurate as most, but it's not my specialty. But I did want to talk about an incident and an occurrence yesterday. Ayo Akinola released by TFC in the MLS, and Ayo Akinola is a player who had and has a lot of promise. And I wanted to look at the opportunity of him coming to Wrexham, recognizing this is a flyer. This is one that has a lot of upside, but it's definitely creative. And so I wanted to talk about him, talk about what he could potentially add to a team like Wrexham or others in the EFL. And a bit of a showcase. So let's get into it. Not wearing the Wrexham apparel today because Stanley Cup playoffs and I get to revert back to ice hockey. So today, Vancouver Canucks took down game one of the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Edmonton Oilers. An amazing performance from this guy, Big Z, smashing people, scoring goals, getting assists. It was a beautiful game, ugly at the start, but they came back and won 5-4. If you haven't joined the channel before, Sean Driver, the Red Horde, what do? I do hors d'oeuvre videos a lot of the time. I don't know what I'm going to call this one, where we talk about off-the-pitch stuff that could influence Wrexham on the pitch, usually involving regulations. I post a watch party, a watch-along, and we do that on the weekends, have a lot of fun with that. But I promised myself over the summer I was going to try to get out a little bit more content on other topics and try to do some different things and improve on the watch party. And so you won't see those until the end of the year, but it's exciting. If it is your first time here and you end up watching this and you like the content, hit the subscribe button. I certainly would welcome that. And one other thing to push. Wrexham coming to Vancouver, can't forget. And on the 27th, hosting a pre-match meet and greet at The Pint in Vancouver. Gonna have the place to ourselves. Going to be able to do our thing. Should be a lot of fun. Got a lot of people who have been messaging me telling me that they're going to come, so I'm expecting hopefully a full house, which would be hundreds of people before we go over and take in the friendly against Vancouver. But let's jump into Ayo Akinola, released by mutual consent from his contract with TFC. Who is he? Why is he important? And let's just jump in. Ayo, he's a 24-year-old footballer. He was born in Detroit, Michigan. And then at 1 year of age, he moved over into Canada, and he was raised basically in Brampton. His mom emigrated from Nigeria and transitioned out. He played largely through the U.S. development system. He had a number of games playing for U15, U17, U20 in the United States, and that was really his development and his improvement as he's a forward and as a striker and perfecting his craft. The ultimate result was he ended up getting a kick with Toronto FC, starting with TFC 2. Climbing the ladder, playing for TFC, and he does have 4 caps with Canada, one of those being where he suffered an injury. Here's the situation. He came out like gangbusters originally as a 20-year-old. He came into the MLS. He played in the Welcome Back tournament. He was second overall in that competition in scoring, completely shocked everybody, looked exceptionally impressive. The world was his oyster, as you were. He was getting discussions from teams around the world that were interested in him. And he ended up parlaying that into another solid season, 2020, although still COVID related, where he led his team with 9 MLS goals. And so he proved 21 years of age, had the tools, had the skills, had the ability. And then he tore his ACL. Playing in a game against Canada, got into a challenge, it went out, and he came back and he has never quite been the same again. And so ultimately released largely, as I understand, a byproduct of his salary. I'll get into those discussions a little bit later. And so why do I bring this up? In the EFL, you have a 22-man squad list, and that squad list you have to enter into at the end of September and at the end of the January window. You can leave a spot open like Wrexham has done in the past with Ford or McFadden, who ended up joining last season. You can have as many contracts as you want. There's no requirement and no cap that says you have to have a certain number of contracts. The downside is you still have to pay for them. But other than the financial compensation that has to go out, there's no limitation. And whether the player plays in your reserve team or he ends up being in your 22-man squad or he just gets some cup games, that's all available as to the election of the club to do so. So my thought was, what if you could take someone who, by all accounts, had all of the tools to be something special, was recognized and recruited by both the U.S. national team, was recruited by the Canadian national team. Two questions that usually come up when you talk about North American players or players outside of England and whether they would fit in England, and that is, do they want to play in Europe? That's first. And second, can they play in that style? The answer to the first question, does he want to play in Europe? The answer is unequivocally yes. There's a transfer market article, I'll put the link down below, about whether he wants to play in Europe. And it's no secret, back in July 24, 2020, that he had an open offer to play in the Eredivisie with PSV Eindhoven, a solid squad, largely following the goals and the trajectory that one of his idols, mentors, whatever you want to call, Josie Altidore, did, playing in the Eredivisie for AZ back in the day. Altidore also played for Sunderland when they were in the Premier League, although he didn't show as well there as he did in the Dutch First Division. But in any event, he did want to move to Europe at some point in time, but he wanted to start his career closer to home, and so he did that with TFC. He said that without a doubt that he wanted to look at Europe, and that was every kid's dream. And the discussions from Transfer Market, I'll just read from the article that's here and put it up. The 20-year-old, without a doubt, has the skills to play in a top European league. Fast, strong, and intelligent. Akinola has the sort of unlearnable raw skills that players need to succeed in the top leagues. But where would Akinola like to continue his career? The striker takes his time to answer those questions, and then he points to Germany and the Bundesliga and the Netherlands as his ideal destinations. I should say the Bundesliga likely because Alphonso Davies is also represented by the same agency that represents Akinola. So he preferred to join those two leagues. So that's where he was in 2020, lighting the world on fire, ends up injuring himself, and then in November 24, 2020, this article comes out that kind of summarizes where he was at. Toronto FC's Ayo Akinola caught between potential and unfilled talent. And it basically goes on and says speaks of how prolific he was at scoring at such a young age, and says, over the last year, watching him grow as a player and a person has been extremely gratifying to the many staff who worked with him along the player pathway. They saw glimpses over 2 seasons of where he could be, and they just think of how he's going to be with a TFC player. And the discussion was, there's no denying that he has the talent to succeed, pace, strength, technical ability to terrorize any MLS defense. And there was no reason why he can't fulfill his undoubted potential. The reality was, he wasn't fulfilling his potential. He struggled with TFC. They ended up putting him on loan to San Jose. I mean, at the time, TFC was doing really, really poorly. They were 3 wins, 11 draws, and 10 losses, I think, at that point in the season. And then they went to San Jose, and he didn't fare much better. And then this season, he went back to TFC and was ultimately released. Why? Well, he was on a salary that was at $771,875 for the year. That's a lot of money if you're not performing. 618,360 pounds if you want to do the equivalent. So he's been released by mutual consent, and the question is, as of yesterday, where does he go? And the options are, he can go to a Canadian Premier League side, that's second tier in Canada. He can go to USL, second tier in the US. Could he find an MLS home? Maybe. It's possible on a reduced salary that he could find that, but he's not going to get a lot of playing time, and it's that playing time that I think he needs. If he goes to the CPL, he'll certainly play. The challenge, the maximum salary, 100,000 quid. The minimum salary, 17,500. The average salary, 26,500. That's a large drop from 771,000. And I'm not saying, 618,360. I'm not suggesting that he goes on to a massive contract. But what I think that he needs, and what is being pointed out, is the CPL, bless the league, love it. Actually, I prefer the CPL to the MLS as far as watching and seeing the young players develop. But what does he need right now? He needs an opportunity, and he needs support, and he needs sort of the health monitoring that would be able to monitor his ACL status and find a mechanism to improve things. And do I think that's in the CPL? Yes, to a certain degree. Do I think it's better in the higher tiers of the EFL? Absolutely. And so you look at the opportunity to be in Wrexham and say, or any EFL side and say, why wouldn't somebody take a complete flyer on this kid? You're going to get him at a discount. He's been scouted and offered contracts at a young age. His talent is undeniable. We know that because he's been offered contracts even at 20 years of age with top tier European clubs and had interest. He's proven himself when healthy and at full capacity at the MLS. And so why not take on the contract at a reduced amount, have him training with top quality players, have him running out into reserve matches to be able to warm up, get some cup competitions, the trophy competitions, and get out and have a kick and measure himself against top quality. And if it works out, the perfect dream is you've got a guy for a year, maybe two, who ends up coming in January, and it's like a free agent signing in North America. He just slides back in, and you've got yourself a potential rock star for a period of time. And it would be glorious if it worked out. And if it doesn't work out, what's the consequence? You gave a guy an opportunity on a discount, you monitored him, you tried to make it work, and it didn't work out. I see this as a low-risk, high-reward flyer. Could he end up getting interest elsewhere? I think that's potential. I think there's potential there. If you're going to talk about the second question that was raised is why potentially Wrexham and could he fit within the EFL? So let's talk about the type of player that he is. Pace for days. Exceptionally fast. I'm going to put a highlight video down below. Go ahead and watch that. And I'm not going to play the U17 and the U20 games that he was involved in because that's, he certainly excelled in that area, but you can't get an appreciation for his size as it currently is because he was 17 at the time, and his power and his pace. But you watch that, he scores goals poaching around the front of the net. He scores goals with pace on the open side. He scores goals by just bullying defenders. And the articles talk about having all of those intangibles and raw skills. What type of game does he play? If you ever saw Josie Altidore play, that's the style he emulates. That's who he filled in for during the MLS Is Back tournament, who was out with an injury at the time, Altidore was. And he filled the same role, bullying defenders and scoring. A porcupine in a balloon factory, just powering through people, smashing into them. And really, some people suggest that the injury may have set him back more mentally than it did physically, because there's an intimation from those who have watched him play that the concern with the injury is that he played that bullying style, that freight train style, and that requires you to be physical consistently. And if you don't trust the legs and the knee and the injury, you're a little bit loath to get into positions that you normally would get into that would drive you to success. And you stepping back, you're not using embodying defenders to open up space. You're not being that crushing force that you've been before. And it's the mentality that maybe is lost that needs to be found. But he is a guy who could be a physical force. Parky tends to like that. Call it a Palmer light or a Palmer replacement, depending on how he performs. And he still has the ability in open play to get there with pace and his work rate. He's a resilient guy. Everybody talks about his character, and there, I'll put in that video down below that talks about what his mother and his brother and he went through in immigrating to Canada through the United States. Homelessness was a part of that. There were challenges that they went through, and it built the character of a guy who's willing and has the track record of working his butt off. So the physical therapy sounds like it was put in. There are some people who say that TFC, similar to Sheffield United with Jebinson, may have dropped the ball, but I don't think anybody really knows the answer to those questions. It's just speculation. If somebody doesn't turn out right, well, it's got to be the medical people's fault. I don't know whether that's right, but he's in an opportunity with this mutual termination to find an opportunity for success. And that choice is going to be important, whether that's the CPL, the USL, somewhere over in Europe for success. I don't think he's going to be going on a big money contract. He's going to be wanting to seek out an opportunity. And what better opportunity is there than to have a crack on a League One team that might be a step down from where his ultimate goal is. But because he's not there to prove himself, to earn his way on a limited income, and then to prove himself with solid medical monitoring needs. And I think that Wrexham has the ability to provide that. And so I actually think that even though it's a crazy thought, there's some synergy here for both parties. So I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be out to lunch, but that's my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. I am going to come up with a couple of other videos. I've got one in the cooker. I've done the research for that on the women's side because I wanted to talk about the UEFA Women's Championship coefficient and how that influences Wales and why we are all Cardiff City fans, at least for the purposes of that tournament. So I'm going to go through that. I've got another video that's coming out. Still always working on the academy. Another one with some social media stuff. And I'm going to be bringing back the Who Are You series for all 23 teams in League One. That I'm going to start researching and doing that over the summer. So lots going on, even though I'm not out here all the time with the videos. That's about it. Sean Driver, the Red Horde. Hope you like that one. Let me hear your thoughts. Hit the subscribe button if you liked it. But let me know your thoughts. Do you like this sort of stuff? Should I do more of it? Trying to look into the MLS players. There are 2 more that I want to look at, both playing for the Vancouver Whitecaps, who we may see on July 27th. At least one of them we'll see. One of them I'm not sure. But that's who I'm going to go and watch. Not just the Wrexham players, but there's 2 players that are on the Vancouver side that I want to keep an eye on. And I'll get into that before the game. Anyway, Sean Driver, that's it. I'm rambling. Have a good one. Bye.